All right, hi everybody. Ryan Pruitt, typical white guy. We're here once again. As always, cats walking in and out. We just roll with it. iPad falls over. We roll with it. That's what we do around here. Um, I make these videos for various reasons. A lot of times it's just for me to not put it on Facebook and end up in arguments with my friends and family. Part of it as well is to just kind of keep. There's just so much happening so fast in the news with this impeachment process that I just have to make these videos to just as like a timestamp, kind of where we're at. So when we're further down the road, I can just make sense of it maybe and remind myself where we were. So today is Halloween. The House of Representatives right now is doing their first official House-wide voting on formalizing the impeachment process. We'll get into the back and forth about that on another one. For now, I just want to deal with the factual. Here's where we are with the facts of this impeachment thing that literally has happened in the last 5 weeks. I mean, it's amazing. I've two lists now of people that have come forward, either have come forward to testify or being invited to come testify. Um, so Watergate, the story of Watergate begins with the impeachment of Richard Nixon the story begins with Watergate, which occurred in June 1972. But as it turned out, there were events that happened before and after the Watergate break-in so while the story starts here, timeline-wise, there were things that happened before and there were the things that happened after. With the Trump impeachment, however the story ends, the story begins with the July 25th phone call. That's the tip of the iceberg. That everything, there's a before and an after. And so I guess today I just want to get my head straight on the story so far. I got in a long back and forth Twitter argument with a fella, I'm assuming a fella, who was pro-Trump, and I guess near the end he realized that I'm not an impartial observer in this, and I wasn't pretending to be. And I told him near the end when I saw the transcript or the memo of the transcript that President Trump released concerning the July 25th phone call to the Ukraine president with that quote in the context with my prior knowledge and listen, my prior bias, that transcript alone, to me, I said that's a crime. You, as president, you can't do that. And so if I were a juror, as I told him, I probably could not be on an impartial jury because of my past campaign experience, because of my past stated political beliefs. I most likely could not be an impartial juror. If I was a member of the House of Representatives, I would probably, because you don't need to be impartial. I mean, you should be fair, but you don't have to pretend you're not coming from a certain angle on it. It looks bad. Put it that way. Looks like a crime. But when you think about it, so on the July 25th phone call, you have President Trump seeking to leverage military aid had been approved by Congress, was supposed to have, they talk about what did Ukraine know and what didn't they know at the time of the phone call. They do know that it hadn't arrived yet. They do know that Congress had already approved the aid, and they do know it had not arrived yet. As well, in the middle of the phone call, the Ukrainian president was making a separate request for a different arms shipment. So even if they weren't aware officially of this other aid being held up, within the phone call, the president was making a request right then of, hey, as a country, we need this from you as people that we buy from. But what the president then said, when he said, I need you to do as a favor, though, and it was a two-part favor, just within this one phone call, just in the part that's been released, there were two favors that the president asked. And this is ultimately going to come down to a charge of corruption. And corruption can be hard to prove. It's more difficult to prove because it's more about state of mind than it is action. As the President of the United States, you are allowed physically to pick up the phone and call whoever you want. You're allowed that action. But your intent, what's going on in your head, the reason that the brain is telling the hand to pick up the phone, that can be, while the action is legal, the state of mind, the intent, can be illegal. And that's what corruption is. Corruption is when you're doing the right thing for the wrong reason. And that's what, and it can be tough to prove. It can be tough to prove what is going on in someone's head that externally is legal. You have to prove in a state of mind can be, it's a different kind of evidence required. And the thing is, this phone call, this request that the president made, it could not have happened in the first 3 months of his presidency. Because in the first 3 months, the first year of the Trump presidency, he had people around him, Reince Priebus, as chief of staff, would not have allowed the phone call to take place without a script in front of him. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson at the time would not have allowed this to happen without going through him. You know, who else was there? You know, people like John Kelly. You know, you hate to see that. You know, it's amazing now these are the good guys. Lord, we didn't know back then what we had. One of the evidence that this phone call didn't happen out of the clear blue sky, and the fact that they knew there was something wrong with this phone call, goes back to early in 2019 when President Trump, through Giuliani, through investigation, through pressure, had the ambassador removed. Anna, what's her name? Where's her name go? Marie Yovanovitch. She was the Ukraine ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, was supposed to serve on at least another year, was all of a sudden told, you got to go. And even the people around her couldn't give her reason as to why, other than she played by the rules. Again, you are allowed to remove an ambassador. You serve at the pleasure of the president, absolutely. But you still have to have an uncorrupt reason. And the only reason they've ever given officially is that she wasn't pro-Trump. And so that's the beginning of the setup to create the conditions for the July 25th phone call. So before the phone call, you have Congress approve the funds, which is public. But in order for the conditions to be proper, that the president can make this kind of phone call, you got to have DOD on board, you got to have the State Department on board, and you have to have the NSC on board. And that's where you get into these acting heads. You get into a Secretary of State like Pompeo, who clearly is on board. And that's why you have all these, but now you have these witnesses that are coming forward from the DOD. You got the Assistant Secretary of Defense, Laura Cooper. You've got Tim Morrison. And I mean, that's one of the key things is now you got three officials. You've got Kurt Volker, who was he was the envoy, the working for free envoy, who the minute that the minute the whistleblower complaint came out and sort of put him in a position, Volker resigned and then testified. You've got Tim Morrison is an NSC point of contact that has been mentioned by other people, is now testifying and quit so he could testify freely. And then he had one other person who quit, Michael McKinley, who was, I believe, Pompeo's advisor. The minute the State Department got involved, so you got these three officials now that, as their name came up and their time in the tube was coming, not only are they defying the White House, but they are resigning their position. They are giving up their role to even ensure even more that they can speak their mind. If I'm Republicans, if I'm Trump, this is bad. They are willing to give up their job so you have less control over them. That's how bad it is right now for him. And what these witnesses are coming forward to tell, most of the story they're telling right now is about before July 25th. They're talking about removing the ambassador. They're talking about having a meeting because it turns out that there was a demand. There was a quid pro quo. It wasn't, Ukraine did not have a choice. Ukraine wanted a meeting in the White House, they wanted the military aid, they wanted the javelins. They wanted those things. And the Trump administration made it damn clear, with the right people installed and the right people removed, that if you want those things, here's what we need. We want you to investigate the 2016, which people want to argue that investigating what happened in the 2016 campaign doesn't affect the 2020 campaign is wrong, because if Trump could somehow prove that the media and the Democrats were the official narrative of the 2016 election was wrong, and it makes the Democrats look bad, that helps him in the 2020 election. So I don't give a rip about that argument, because it's still there is an upcoming election, and that's the other thing being argued right now in the House as they debate these rules is that why don't we just leave it to the election? Election is literally 1 year from right now. Why don't we just leave it in the hands of the people to vote in an election? The problem is what the president is being charged with has to do with the election. It has to do with him trying to influence the 2020 election. So at the minimum, the reason you impeach, the reason you make such a big deal about this is to at least put your foot down to say, no, you are not, if you're going to win in 2020, you're going to do it fair and square. You're not going to do it with foreign assistance. You're not going to do it by asking favors of foreign countries. And that all felt good, but I feel like I really didn't make any progress. There's just a lot going on. We'll be back for another episode. Thanks.